Hi, I'm Andrew.
And I'm Dave, and we're the IB English guys. Don't forget, everybody, as the exams are approaching, that we have a website full of great materials. We have a Paper 1 and Paper 2 study guide that we think is really helpful.
We've also just released an individual oral planning guide, so those of you in year 1 or just starting year 2, if that assessment's coming up, you might want to check out that resource as well. It's really powerful. Giles, what are we talking about today? And why are we talking about it?
Yeah, well, we saw a comment on the YouTube channel, and we read those religiously every morning with our coffee, and we saw that someone asked for us to do a video about infographics, and we thought, hey, infographics are very rich visual text with all kinds of rich language, and so we thought it was a great idea because they make great text to talk about.
Yeah, they are great text. We were doing our research on infographics. We came up with sort of 5 main organizational strategies that lots of infographics are using, and we'd like to present those to you now. Mr. Giles, what's one strategy that you've come up with, an organizational structure?
Yeah, so we want to think about some infographics use a chronological structure, and then again, they're going to show that sort of passage of time or some kind of sequence with time, so it might be chronological.
Yeah, you also see a hierarchical structure for some infographics. That's going to be different elements of power. You might see that, Mr. Giles, if you're looking at an organization or other business entity where you have something on top, then another level down, then another level down. Sometimes those are shown through pyramids as well, but you're looking at different power levels.
Yeah, different levels. That's great. Another organizational strategy is problem solution. Again, a lot of infographics are made by non-governmental organizations, nonprofits. So again, they're looking at a problem and then offering a solution.
Yeah, similarly, those organizations might employ a cause and effect approach as well, looking at what may have caused this situation and what are the effects or the implications of the situation. Cause and effect. And there's one more, Mr. Giles.
Yeah, the last one is comparative. So they might be looking at 2 comparative ideas or 2 comparative groups, and that might be organized so that we can see the similarities and differences between those. Now, I think what's important to think about is that these are 5 different organizational patterns. Look at it holistically and ask yourself, how is this laid out? What is the structural pattern? I think that's a good way into the infographic.
All right, Mr. Giles, what do you say we look at some infographic conventions, go over those, and then in the last part of our video, we can apply those to an infographic.
Yeah, and don't forget, always we have a handout that's attached to this video, and you want to look at that. The first convention we want to think about is the title. We want to really examine the title carefully and think about how that's formatted and what that says.
Yeah, also you want to look at the subheadings. You'll find that under the title, oftentimes the purpose statement is hiding in there, Mr. Giles. So you want to look very carefully about the subheadings and see if you can find some key information there.
Yeah, infographics, all infographics use icons, and these icons are symbols that represent ideas or concepts. We want to really unpack them.
Yeah, you'll see charts and graphs as well. Of course, they're trying to give lots of information, but rather than conveying long paragraphs, they're going to try to represent that visually through charts and graphs.
Yeah, it could be like pie charts and bar graphs and things like that. We also have lists and bullets. That again, these are concise, easy to digest text, so we want to think about things that are bulleted out and organized that way.
Yeah, color is very interesting as well, Mr. Giles. Of course, the IB is now printing all their exams in color, so you want to pay close attention to that color palette and think about what emotions or what value messages are sort of conveyed through the color choices.
Yeah, color psychology, that's great. Typography, we want to think about our fonts, we want to think about font size, font type, and think about how typography might come into play.
Yeah, you want to think about the reliability of the information as well. Look for the sources. Oftentimes you'll see that as a footnote or in the footer at the bottom of the infographic. That's critical. Oftentimes you'll see other sources. It's almost like a works cited page. Where did they get the information from? Can you trust this infographic?
Yeah, the next is a visual metaphor. So again, visuals can be used metaphorically, and I think that's really interesting to look at. It's a little different from icons.
Yeah, because it's an informational text type, look for statistics. Lots of data and information will be conveyed that way, and that will be persuasive as well.
Yeah, we want to look for labels, things that are labeled and clearly identified. Again, that's again something to look for.
Yeah, infographics also have comparisons, Mr. Giles. Sometimes you'll be looking at 1 or 2 products or more than 2 ideas. They want to compare and contrast between these ideas or elements. Look for comparisons.
The last one I think is important for a lot of text that you're going to see in the exams is that interactive elements. Most text that you see on exams are actually online text, clickable buttons and things to invite us to go elsewhere to learn more or share, those kinds of things, social media.
Yeah, now that we've gone over some of those key features and conventions of infographics, let's go ahead and dive into one right now. As you can see it on the screen, Mr. Giles, can you just give us like a 1 or 2 sentence summary of what we're looking at?
Yeah, so first of all, I noticed that this infographic is about poverty. It's organized by an organization. Down at the bottom, we see the name of the organization, the Chronic Poverty Chronic Poverty Advisory Network. So again, this is about poverty. It's a problem solution structure. I see that we know that global poverty is an issue, and they're offering some good solutions.
Yeah, and I almost see it like 3 levels, Mr. Giles. I see like a top horizontal bar, a middle horizontal bar, and then sort of that solution is the bottom horizontal bar. So I almost see the infographic dividing structurally into thirds.
That's great.
That's how I might talk about it.
And
Now,
they're inviting us, that visual path is so vital when they construct these infographics. I want to think about that. We read from left to right, from top to bottom. So it's very logical.
Well, assuming that visual pathway, Mr. Giles, we're going to start in the upper left-hand corner, and I noticed the title of this infographic is Getting to Zero Poverty by 2030, and then we see a subtitle, The Road Out of Poverty is Rarely a Smooth One-Way Street. And then there's an icon there. Mr. Giles, can you analyze and interpret that for us?
That looks like a visual metaphor to me. That again is, and that invitation of why, that question why, they're making us think about this smooth. This it's not a smooth one-way street. I think that icon really indicates that.
Yeah, and then the icon being a roadside itself is sort of pointing you in the visual pathways, telling you to move to the right. So off we go, right?
Yeah, notice that they're even offering the solution, getting to zero poverty by 2030. They're saying this is their goal.
This is the goal.
That's really optimistic. They're not just like hitting us with the difficulties of poverty. They're actually encouraging us, let's get out of this.
Exactly. Now, in that upper third, if we call this the problem aspect of the infographic, I see 3 problems, which is sort of that nice tricolon number. What do you notice about the way that information is presented, Mr. Giles?
Yeah, well, in that first panel, we noticed that they're talking about that how people stay in poverty over a matter of time, and I think that also might show the different generations, the way poverty can be passed down. And again, we see that visually represented with the icons and the pictograms of the 3 figures with the $0 over their heads.
Pictograms, I like that one. Yeah, Mr. Giles, if I look at that second box, I see the circle with the backslash in there, and that indicates no, something missing, and we see that money is missing and that agriculture is missing from this person's life, leading to impoverishment.
Yeah.
And I think that's notable.
Yeah, we see the label at the bottom, right? And that label is important. That's again, identifying. The last one has this soul figure, then again, the pictogram of the individual with the thought bubble. And I like that thought bubble. That really shows that these are his internal worries or concerns. And then it talks about how people that lack the skills and the education, and those icons that note the different things that they're missing, that they're kind of longing for.
Yeah.
So I think that's interesting.
Mr. Giles, one thing I'd like to add is, we can't just ignore the language. I love the phrase hit by shocks. It almost implies that, these people who are experiencing poverty have done nothing wrong, but something's happened to them.
Yeah.
I like the way that verb comes out.
Permanently above the heads, keeping their heads permanently above the poverty line. It's almost like they're drowning, right? They're just trying to keep their heads above water.
Don't forget to explore the language as well. Okay?
Yeah.
Let's go to the middle third now of this infographic. I see a graph, Mr. Giles, and that's one of the things we're meant to look for. What is the infographic trying to accomplish with this graph here?
Yeah, the graph's interesting because the graph indicates that people that fall into poverty far outnumber the people that escape poverty, and that's clearly identified. The gray lines in the bar graph are the people that fall into poverty, and the white are the people that escape poverty. So it's very easy to identify that in all of these different countries, notice we're talking about many different continents here, Mexico and Senegal and Tanzania, we see that it's the same pattern. It's very macro. They're looking very macro at the problem.
Well, that's interesting because we have the macro there and we're looking at sort of that information is quantitative. It was taken from statistics, but then on the right-hand side, we have some qualitative data, and we see a man named Emmanuel represented by an icon rather than his photograph, and then it's labeled as a life history. This is interesting. This is cool. Talk about it.
I love that because it's personalizing it. I think whenever we have an anecdote or a story that's individual, that's again, we know that's gonna have more of an impact. And we see his lifespan when he's born, how he attends primary school, but then again, we have famine and some of the things that have befallen Emanuele. I think it's interesting. Like these are the things that he struggles with, right? He has divorce. He has, he can't afford to take care of his family.
And one thing to add, I think the choice of presenting this as a line graph is really interesting because we see this broken, it has ups and downs. It's very inconsistent, and that shows how volatile that person's life is. That's just how volatile it is being in poverty. Some days you're doing well, and other days you're doing really poorly. So if you look at that over time, it's
tapering off. His well-being has really declined. So again, that really makes us think about that's a person there.
Now, luckily, there is a solution to all this hardship, and we see that in the bottom 1/3 of the infographic. Can you talk about holistically what you noticed there, Mr. Giles?
Well, the first thing I noticed is that pictogram of that person with the backpack is definitely the biggest icon in the entire infographic. And again, him climbing or her climbing is, again, very significant to show that sort of sense of growth and improvement, right?
Yeah, and also wearing the backpack. I went backpacking with this guy over the summer. Carrying a bunch of stuff in your backpack's hard work, and I think the implication here, we can infer that that Chronic Poverty Advisory Network wants to tell us that, hey, we can do something, but this is a challenge. This is a climb. You got to put on your heavy backpack and go for it.
Yeah, and then they have the icons that are that, and then they also have the list next to the icons. So like, hey, in case you were wondering, we know that the first icon is education, the second is social assistance. These are all the elements that are going to equip this person to get out of poverty.
And I
love that.
Yeah, and we have a poverty line at the bottom, and the person is going up the steps. It looks like a 3-step approach, 3 distinct objectives. 1, tackle chronic poverty, that's the lower level. 2, stop impoverishment. And then 3, build sustained escapes from poverty. It's almost like a chronological sequence of how to accomplish this and get out of poverty.
Tackle, stop, build. And finally, I think we should talk about color, because I think the color palette is really important. What do you notice about the yellow?
Well, Mr. Jaws, I think, we have this whole, roadmap. We have a pathway, a one-way street, and I think that if we're on a road, we need road signs, and I see this whole issue as being presented with alarm and danger, and that's often the color. Black and yellow is the kind of road sign you see when there's danger, so I think that's kind of the intent.
Yellow light. It's flashing. It's warning.
It's warning. It's a warning sign.
That's good. And again, I think the black and gray, those are serious colors. And they're and again, the seriousness of poverty, they want us to really
poverty and pink pastels don't really go together, do they, Mr.
Sure.
Giles? No, this is an alarming issue. We need alarming colors to show caution.
Yeah, I agree. Why don't you talk about the logo lastly?
Yeah, I think, if you wanted to take on the logo, I mean, there is a call to action there at the end. It says, read the Chronic Poverty Report. You can take action by going to the website. You can follow them on Twitter. And then their logo is interesting. It's sort of this icon or this logo where you have one square kind of falling off. It's almost representing something that's incomplete, something's missing, almost that this organization understands that, we're not whole. There's a group of us in the population of the planet missing. We have to somehow bring this part back to the whole. I think maybe that's why they have that cautionary yellow square falling off the main logo.
I love that. That's a great interpretation. I like the interactive elements we talked about, right? The buttons and the links that are like, hey, we're not done. This is information, but this is not, we can't just read an infographic and solve poverty. You need to read more about it, and I think that's important.
Yeah, folks, in the end, we hope this video is helpful. I know a lot of you have been asking for infographics. Remember, we gave you 5 different ways to organize. We gave you about 20 different terms, and we've deconstructed this. Look carefully as you're looking at your infographics on assessment. Make sure you're looking for effects, implications, color, and crush that, and good luck on your assessment.
Yeah, good luck, guys.